we are reading Silhouettes, a James Bond story by Komodo13. It's about a beautiful MI6 agent goes rogue in Kuala Lumpur and creates an international incident. James Bond is sent to capture or eliminate her in order to avoid a war between India and Pakistan, but as he pursues her through Southeast Asia, he discovers there's too much more to the situation than meets the eye, and comes face to face with an old enemy. More likely, Blofeld, but who knows. Anyway, let's start this shit, shall we? There must be no regrets, no false sentiment. He must play the role which she expected of him. The tough man of the world, the secret agent, the man who was only a silhouette. Ian Fleming, Moonraker. Prologue. Kuala Lumpur. James Bond kicked open the metal fire door and secured the stairway and swept the landing with his Walter PPK, looking over the sights for any sign of a threat. There were none, although the low-rent apartment building throbbed and pulsed with life. This small stretch of hallway was dead, quiet. The running, laughing, wailing children with their exasperated parents chasing behind them. The loud, drunken arguments or shouted greetings. All of the usual chaos of life in an overcrowded, poorly maintained Southeast Asian slum building seemed to be taking place every place except here. Its absence caused the hair on the back of Bond's neck to rise. The safe house's door was almost directly across from the emergency stairs. It was just good protocol, and Bond stormed to the doorway, letting his momentum and power build. Knowing that speed and force would be his only advantages if any surveillance had picked him up, he tossed a handful of concussions charges, molded to look like Malaysian coins, to the doorknob and turned his head away from the blast. In the enclosed hallway, it was loud enough to leave his ears ringing. Whatever element of surprise he'd had was just lost, but he knew that the lock, hinges, and frame would be reinforced. Bond put the power he had into a kick and felt the door give way. He stormed the apartment, found himself in a sparsely furnished common area. He flowed tactically, keeping the gun at high ready, following the swiveling of his head as he scanned his surroundings. The woman was in low crouch near the center of the room. She was more beautiful than the pictures in her dossier. Life, giving her beauty and realness to the photo, could never capture. The thin lining slacks and white tank top she wore accentuated the generous curves of her hips and the immodest swell of her breasts. Her brownish black hair was tied back, but sweat sparkled ringlets stuck to her forehead, and an azure crystal pendant hung in a choker round her neck. Her eyes were deepest brown he'd ever seen. She had a polymer subcompact automatic leveled at him, and his PPK was pointed at her. Agent Manyam, he said. So, she replied, you are the one they sent. They both fired. At the time, oh wait, that was the prologue? What the fuck? So wait, They fired on each other? I thought they were on the same side. What the fuck? It doesn't make any sense. Chapter 1, I guess. I guess the 1 means chapter 1. Who knows? At the time it began when the flash traffic reports came in from Kuala Lumpur station through the massive information clearinghouse embedded in the American embassy in Afghanistan, which sucked up signal information from the ball-in line jaws of a whale and then shot directly to London. When the writhing jumble of contradictory and semi-accurate reports finally smoothed and coalesced into a coherent story, and the alarm bells went off at the highest level of Her Majesty's government, James Bond was objectively regarding the sapphire blue face of his Omega DeVille and mulling whether he wanted to end the evening by getting drunk or sleeping with the woman at the baccarat table. The slashing lines of the Omega hands told him that it was nearly 11 o'clock, and while La Cercle Casino, I'm trying to speak French, so, was barely hitting its stride, even on a Tuesday night, Bond was already bored. He'd already won 3 hands at Texas Hold'em, then promptly lost a chunk of his winnings at the roulette wheel. Neither of fortune's swings had brought him much excitement, hence his next set of options: alcohol or sex. That's interesting. Wait, roulette? He doesn't play roulette. He plays baccarat. I swear he does. She certainly had the air of someone who was inclined toward a reckless act every now and then. The way her cold blue eyes swept the table, and the slightly dismissive purse to her plump red lips standing in contrast to the immaculately high twisting coif of the glossy black hair, gave Bond a distinct impression of the type of boredom unique to the idle rich. She had an exquisitely aquiline nose. What the fuck are these words? And the matching cleft chin, which stood as testament to high breeding, which was already readily evident in the manner in which she designed not notice the effect her shoulderless chiffon wrap was having on the men around her, gathering close, pretending to be transfixed by the bets she played. Jesus, man, there's so many fucking words. I don't know half the words even mean. Never heard of half these words. What the fuck? Bond sat in for a few rounds, betting on her, just to see what would happen. The woman played the game recklessly, pulling her bets off the banker prematurely, betting on the tie, and then riding the player long past the point of prudence. Money, it seemed, was not something she was deeply concerned with. Only when Bond followed her lead and put the remainder of his poker winnings on the tie, and then to a low chorus of chortles and cheers from the assembled admirers flanking her, watched the bet improperly pay out, did she design to make eye contact. I admire your courage, Bond. Wait. Hold on. That's from Dr. No. I remember that. Hold on. Let me get into the Sean Connery character. I admire your courage. Bond told her across the smoky table. Le Cercle had steadfastly resisted any prohibition on tobacco use, and the air between them was begging grow gray. I admire your luck, Mr. Before he could answer, Bond felt a light touch on his shoulder, and one of the concierges whispered in his ear, "Phone call, monsieur." Bond stood. "I'm afraid you'll have to excuse me," he said. Wait, let me do that in the voice again. "I'm afraid you'll have to excuse me," he said, trying to tamp down the tightness working its way into his voice. He did not receive phone calls to this place except under extraordinary circumstances, and already he felt the crackle of electricity beneath his skin. "Such a pity. We were just getting off to a lovely start," the woman said, a subtle taunt in her voice, daring him to be reckless. "Ignore the call and join her." "And I'm sure it will be equally lovely ending someday," Bond replied, collecting his chips. "Good evening." He left her there, amid the hushed mutterings of her many admirers with her money, games, and boredom. And that's the end of the